You want to impound this vehicle. Arthur Pendleton said it quietly, the way a man speaks when he has already decided how everything is going to end. Chief, you better be absolutely 100% sure you want to go down this road. Because once I sign that impound order, your career and the reputation of this entire town will never be the same again. Those were the last calm words Police Chief Thomas Vance would ever choose to ignore. He didn't listen. The men who held absolute power in the quiet, wealthy suburb of Oak Ridge never did. And what happened next over the next 60 minutes inside a roadside ditch, a patrol car, a cold holding cell, and a panicked district attorney's office would dismantle a city council, strip to high-ranking officials of their freedom, and leave the taxpayers of Oak Ridge with a financial scar they would feel every April for the next 10 years. This was not just a story about a bad cop. It was a story about what happens when arrogance walks into a room that has already been meticulously prepared for it. Arthur Pendleton was 52 years old, broad-shouldered, with a close-cropped salt-and-pepper haircut and a face that had learned over 3 decades in federal oversight to reveal absolutely nothing. He was the deputy director of the Federal Financial Oversight Agency. He had spent his career staring down corporate defense lawyers in high-stakes Senate hearings and dismantling multi-million-dollar embezzlement schemes without his heart rate increasing by a single beat. But on a chilly Thursday afternoon in October, all Arthur wanted was to finish a routine audit of a federal records repository 50 miles away and get home in time for dinner. He pulled his gray government issue, Lincoln Continental, along the manicured main avenue of Oak Ridge. Through the windshield, the town looked aggressively pleasant, the kind of suburb where the sidewalks were pressure washed every spring and the maples were trimmed to a strict, uniform diagram. Then, the blue and red lights flashed in his rearview mirror. Chief Thomas Vance adjusted his duty belt as he stepped out of his black and white cruiser. Vance was 44, thick-necked, and had ruled Oak Ridge PD for 14 years. In this town, the law was whatever Vance said it was, and the town thrived on a very specific, highly lucrative practice, civil asset forfeiture. Under the guise of suspicious activity, Vance had spent years seizing cash and vehicles from wealthy out-of-towners passing through, funneling millions into the department's private funds and the mayor's re-election campaigns. His personnel file held dozens of complaints, all closed without finding. He felt untouchable. Vance tapped heavily on the Lincoln's driver's side window. "Step out of the vehicle, sir," he said, using his bulk as an opening argument. "Clocked you doing 47 in a 45, and I smell something suspicious coming from the trunk." Arthur lowered the glass, looking up at the chief with a neutrality that was neither hostile nor deferential. "Chief, I was strictly within the speed limit, and there is nothing in my trunk but paperwork. I say there's a smell, so there's a smell." Vance ganned, his small-town authority instantly threatened by the man's complete lack of fear. "Step out." Now, Arthur stepped out, rising 2 inches taller than Vance. He didn't argue. He simply stood with an unhurried, quiet authority. On his left wrist, his Omega Seamaster caught the pale October light. Vance saw it as a sign of an easy target, a wealthy city man who would pay his way out of trouble. What Vance didn't know was that the movement inside that specific watch had been modified in a federal tech lab. It housed a highly sensitive microphone array and an encrypted storage chip that was currently streaming their conversation in real time to a secure Department of Justice cloud server. Arthur had been investigating Oak Ridge's asset forfeiture abuse for 3 months. Vance hadn't pulled over a victim. He had walked directly into a federal trap. Vance popped the trunk. Inside, there was no contraband. There was only a locked, anodized aluminum briefcase and a thick, Official envelope containing $15,000 in cash-authorized operational funds for Arthur's audit team. Vance's eyes lit up. Unexplained cash. Structural locking briefcase. This vehicle and the Kersey are being seized under state civil forfeiture guidelines as suspected drug proceeds, Vance declared, reaching for his cuffs. And you're under arrest for failure to comply. I do not consent to this search, nor do I consent to this seizure, Arthur said, his voice dropping half a register into something measured and chillingly precise. My federal badge number is 4409G. That briefcase contains Tier 3 classified financial documentation. Chief Vance, I strongly advise you to look at my credentials in my breast pocket before you click those cuffs. Vance scoffed, the overcompensation of a man trying to drown out a sudden prickle of doubt. Nice story, pal. Save it for the judge. Put your hands behind your back. The steel cuffs clicked shut with a cold, definitive sound. Vance tossed the federal briefcase into the back of his cruiser, completely ignoring the warning. Minute 20, the patrol car pulled into the Oak Ridge precinct lot. Vance escorted Arthur through the sally port and into a drab, concrete holding cell near the back of the building. The room smelled of industrial bleach and old paperwork. Arthur sat down on the metal bench, crossed his legs, and simply waited. He looked at his watch. The audio file was at 24 minutes, fully backed up to the cloud. Vance went to his desk, poured a cup of lukewarm coffee, and began typing up the asset forfeiture report. He was laughing with his deputy, Miller, talking about how they were going to spend the 15 grand. Minute 35, 5 miles away. At the county courthouse, District Attorney Evelyn Reed's private cell phone rang. The caller ID was a restricted Washington, D.C. number. When she answered, the voice on the other end didn't introduce himself. He simply played a crystal-clear audio recording of Chief Thomas Vance saying, "Save the movie lines for the judge, pal." The voice then added, "Ms. Reed, you have exactly 25 minutes to get to Oak Ridge PD and secure that federal property before a tactical team arrives to do it for you." Evelyn's heart stopped. She grabbed her briefcase, sprinted to her car, and drove faster than she ever had in her life. Minute 50, back at the precinct, Vance was just finishing the paperwork. He walked back to the holding cell, leaning against the bars with a smug smile. "Well, Arthur, the tow truck just took your Lincoln to the impound lot. You've got a long night ahead of you." Arthur didn't look up from the bench. "Chief Vance, you should check your lobby camera. Your 60 minutes are up." Minute 55, the double glass doors of the lobby were nearly shattered open. Evelyn Reed burst into the room, her face completely drained of color. Behind her were two armed federal marshals carrying a stack of federal warrants. Evelyn had spent a decade coordinating strategies with Vance, but right now, she looked like a woman who had just watched a bomb fuse ignite. "Thomas!" Evelyn screamed, her voice echoing off the linoleum walls as Vance walked out of the back room. "What in God's name have you done?" Vance blinked, holding his finished booking report. "Evelyn, relax. I just pulled in a massive asset forfeiture. Ji ne mang theo mt hung tian mt ben." "Shut up." Evelyn slammed a folder onto the desk. "The man you have in handcuffs is the Deputy Director of Federal Financial Oversight. He wasn't passing through, Thomas. He has been auditing our entire city budget for the past 90 days. The Department of Justice has a live, encrypted recording of you stealing federal operational funds from his trunk. The governor's office is on line 1, and the FBI has already sealed the exits to this building." Minute 60, exactly 1 hour after the first click of the handcuffs on the side of the road, Arthur Pendleton walked out of the holding area. His suit was still immaculate, his expression completely unreadable. Officer Miller, Vance's young deputy, was trembling so violently He dropped the handcuff keys. They clattered across the floor, coming to rest near Arthur's shoe. Arthur didn't look down. He kept his eyes locked on Vance. "Leave them on," Arthur said quietly. "I want the news vans currently parking outside to see exactly how you run this town." He turned his gaze to the panicked district attorney. "Ms. Reed, I suggest you start making your calls, because tomorrow morning, 40 federal auditors and FBI agents are taking over this precinct. Every single asset you have seized in the last 5 years will be reviewed. Every dime will be returned with interest, and every single contract you signed will be dismantled under a federal microscope." Vance stood frozen, staring out the window as 3 black federal SUVs sealed the parking lot exits with the unhurried coordination of absolute authority. 6 months later, the Oak Ridge Police Department was permanently dissolved, its jurisdiction handed over to the state police. Thomas Vance was sentenced to 6 years in a federal penitentiary for civil rights violations and extortion. The mayor resigned in disgrace, and the town was left to pay a $12 million class action lawsuit, a debt that every taxpayer in Oak Ridge would feel for a decade to come.